Hey guys, and welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a photo edit on my iPhone. So I took this picture a couple days ago with my camera and I put it over to my phone, and I was thinking about a cool video that I could make for you guys, and I was thinking maybe it'd be nice to kind of sort of go through a photo edit and how I would go about it. So I'm going to be doing that today, but just a disclaimer, this is how I would edit the picture. This is just my preferences. It's not how you may do it, and that's fine, but I hope what you can take from this is learn how to use this really cool app, Adobe Lightroom. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, so to get started, Adobe Lightroom is a free app that you can download. There are some premium features that you won't have access to unless you're a member of Adobe's Creative Cloud. All the features that you would normally need to edit a photo, you're going to have that available to you on Lightroom. There's some other apps that you may be able to use to kind of sort of get those other finishing touches that you want. Like if you want to get rid of a blemish on your face, you can go over to Facetune and kind of use the brush tool there to correct that. So here on Lightroom I have open on my phone. I'm going to go ahead on and I already loaded up the picture that I want to edit for you guys. So I'm going to pull it up. And now that I have it open, the first thing that I want to do is I like to kind of sort of correct my composition. So the composition of this picture actually is really pretty good, but there's a lot of negative space around the subject, and I want to just zoom in a little bit in order to do that. This is my friend Mitch. We did a shoot just the other day in downtown, just to get out and do something. All right, so we are going to zoom in just a little bit. You basically can use the rule of thirds here. So I'm going to put that line right on his eye so that he's right in the center of the picture and his eyes are driving the focus. That's the part of the image of any portrait that you want to emphasize. I really like that, so I'm going to go ahead on and hit the OK button. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move over to light. If you want, you can always hit that auto button. What that does is it kind of sort of automates the light and the color in the picture and kind of sort of gives you a nice starting point. I'm not going to do that, so I'm just going to undo it. And I'm going to go back to light now. Alright, so here we have our exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. Alright, so your exposure is going to be exactly how bright the picture is overall, okay? How much light is hitting the sensor of your camera. You can change that in post sometimes. It just all depends on the quality of the picture when it was taken or what camera it was taken on. So I'm going to actually raise the exposure just a little bit to about 0.28 there. Not a lot, not a big difference. If we hold down on the picture, it'll show you kind of sort of the difference between where you started and where you are now. So it's a really good way to kind of sort of check your work, see if you're getting whatever corrections you want out of your image. Alright, so I'm going to go on down to contrast, and I'm going to just raise the contrast slightly, not a lot. I might come back a little bit later and adjust this. And keep that in mind throughout the entire editing process. You can always go back and change a little bit of the settings that you have already manipulated. Highlights, so what the highlights does is it dictates the brightness of the brightest areas of your picture. So you can raise the highlights or you can lower the highlights. As you can see, it doesn't really make a very big difference between the entire scale here of the highlights. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to drop them just a little bit. And if you ever make a mistake and you want to go back to your 0 point on any of these scales here, you just have to double click on the name and it will center back up to 0. Alright, so I'm just going to bring that right back down to about -9. And then shadows pretty much does the same thing as the highlights does, but for the darker areas of your picture. So you can specifically hone in on the dark areas of your picture. So this is really, really helpful when you're shooting portraits and you're in a very bright environment. If you want to see the details in the background, it's always best to expose for the background. So make sure that so if it's very bright, make sure you dial your exposure down so that you can see the details in the background. Your subject may be dark, but in editing you can always bring those shadows up and you can kind of sort of see the really big difference that it makes. It doesn't really change the background all that much. Alright, but as you saw with the highlights, when we move those up and down, it didn't really do much. So if we really blow out the background, if you try to change the highlights, you're not going to be able to recover as much detail. So I'm going to bring the shadows up just a little bit just to bring him in and see you can get the details back in his jeans. We can see his shirt a little bit better. We can also see the jacket that he has thrown over his shoulder a little bit better. All right, so moving down, we have whites. So the whites are going to dictate how much of the colors in your picture are going to show as white. All right, so if we move this up and down, you can kind of sort of see, and you might be saying, okay, this looks very similar to what exposure was doing, and in a way it is. It helps also to add contrast to your picture. So if you decrease the whites and increase the blacks, you're going to increase more contrast. So not as many colors show up as white, and now more colors will show up as black. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to lower the whites, I'm going to raise the blacks a little bit, and now I'm just going to check my image and see where we are. So far there's not been any very big changes to this image. So now I'm going to move on to color. So if we look at his skin, he was actually in the sun the day prior and got a little bit of a sunburn. So I'm going to try to lower that a little bit by going over to mix here. So what mix does is it allows me to control the specific colors within the picture. So I see the reds are a little bit high here in my opinion, so I'm just going to bring them down just a little bit. I'm going to bring the luminance up. All right. So think of luminance as how bright of a color it is. All right, saturation is going to be how much that color kind of sort of punches through at you, and then your hue is going to be so you can actually change the color of it a little bit. All right, so I'm going to just drop the saturation of red down just a touch. I don't want to drop it down too much because if I do that, he looks kind of dead, and we don't want that. All right, if we bring it too high, now it looks like he has, you know, like a red eye. And really red lips. So we're just going to bring it down just a little bit, not a lot, but just enough to kind of sort of probably about -7 there on the saturation in order to brighten this up just a bit and get rid of some of that red. So if we take a look at the before picture and go back to the after picture, we can see we're starting to get that skin tone to come back just a little bit. So that's going to be for your colors. You can do this for all these different colors here. So orange, that'll probably affect his skin tone just a little bit. So we can see that there. And I'm actually going to add just a little bit of orange here. And I'm going to drop the luminance just a bit. So that way he's less red, but now he looks a little bit more tan, which is what he was going for. That looks good with there. So I'm going to move on now. So here is our white balance. And I kind of sort of like the white balance here. I'm not going to change it too much. I think it looks pretty good. Great. So I am actually going to go to back to light and go to curves because I want to adjust these curves just a little bit. To help remove a little bit more of that red tone under his skin, I'm going to hit this red curve. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it down just a bit. I'm going to bring this top edge up just a bit. And that's just going to make a very, very, very small adjustment to the curve. So if we were to move this all the way down, it gets green. If we move this all the way up, it kind of sort of gets red. So I just want it just a touch right there. All right. And then here, what I'm going to do is I like a nice fade. I like crushed colors with my pictures. So I'm going to crush this just a little bit by bringing the edge here of this curve down. And it's just dealing with more of your contrast. So we could add contrast very easily with this curve, as you can see. So we can make the contrast and make it really low, or we can make it really high. So I'm going to just bring it down just a little bit. So let's see what that picture looks like now. So we went from that to that, still not a very big change, which is okay. All right. So I also like to bring the saturation down just a little bit on the overall picture because I don't like it to be too strong. All right, I like it to be a very subtle picture. So if we adjust this temperature, we can kind of sort of see how we can make a picture warmer or we can make it a little bit cooler. So I'm going to drop the temperature just a little bit right there, and now you can see a little bit more of a drastic difference between the two pictures. All right. So we have that picture there, which is the original, and then now we have this with this new color temperature, which I really like, and a little bit of this desaturated colors. Now we can come into effect. So what effect does will allow us to add different things like grain, we can add texture, we can bring up the clarity, and things like that. What clarity will do is help make those details pop, but if you overdo it, it can look kind of fake. So if we pull that all the way up, we could see that there. And I don't really like that look. I do want to bring the clarity up just a little bit. I'm going to bring it up by about 4, not too much, and then I'm also going to dehaze this picture. So dehazing this picture is going to bring just a little bit of the colors back in the background, but not too much. So I'm going to go at +4 there, and then vignette. So there's a lot of negative space still around him, and I want everyone to focus in on him as the subject. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the vignette. All right, so if we bring this lower, you can see as the edges are getting a little bit darker. And now we're starting to see a more dramatic change in this picture. All right, because now we're able to really hone in on him and his face. So we can lower or raise that midpoint. All right, so I can make it just like this. And I really like that picture because now we're kind of really honing in on him. Background's getting a little bit darker and your eye is just naturally drawn to that center of the picture. I'm gonna feather it just a little bit more because I feel like that line is really harsh. So we can have a really harsh line like that, or we could kind of sort of feather it out. So I'm gonna feather it out just a bit so it's not too stark. All right, I'm gonna add just a touch of gray, not too much. I just like it to have that nice little vintage feel as if it was taken on a film camera or something like that. So just add just a touch of grain for it, nothing over the top, because if you overdo it, now the picture kind of sort of look out of focus in my opinion. I don't really appreciate the grain as much in that quantity. I like it a little bit lower. So I'm gonna go with about 20 on the grain. Okay, you can change the size of the grain and the roughness. I like the way it looks, so I'm gonna leave it there. Or the last part of this is gonna be your details. So the details, you can either sharpen the image or you can reduce the noise. So noise reduction would come in if you took a picture in low light and you decided that you wanted to raise the shadows. And when you raise the shadows with a low light picture, you can expect to see some noise come in, some like natural grain from the camera, and you might not want to have that look, so you can use noise reduction to remove that. But too much noise reduction also may look fake. All right, and the last thing we're gonna do now is create preset. And then now I can name this preset for what I wanted. So I'm gonna call this Downtown Crushed Colors, because this was typically what I would like to see in a picture from downtown. All right, so now I have that preset. Basically what you just did was create your own filter. So next time you ever go back into Lightroom, all you have to do is hit that preset and you're gonna get everything that we just did with this picture, which is a really cool thing, because now you don't have to take as much time when it comes to editing this picture, so you can get them up to Instagram and Facebook that much quicker. So thanks for watching this video. I really appreciate all the support you guys have been giving me so far throughout this journey that I'm on of creating this YouTube channel, and I look forward to making more for you guys. Let me know in the comments if there's anything that you would really like to see me do. I really appreciate it, and comment, like, and subscribe below. Really helps me out, helps the channel out, and helps get my message out to more people. Until next time, see ya.